Okay, so the video that you're watching right now is a video response to the article that the Letaba Herald did on me in regards to the reasons why I left Protrack and my previous video on the reasons why I left Protrack. So if you're not entirely familiar with my previous video or the article, I recommend that you go and check them out in the description down below, in the order of my video and then the article that they wrote on me. Okay, so now that we're all caught up, you've seen my video and you've seen the article written on me about my video. So let's go and talk about what I do like about the article. Alright, so obviously you would expect a video response to this from me to be very aggressive and negative. But believe it or not, there were some things that I liked in the article and the reporter did get correct. For example, he got my name right. Yeah, that's about it. The reporter that was responsible for writing this specific article made a series of claims and a lot of them were not correct in the slightest. One of the main issues I have with this article is that the reporter claims that the only reasons that I left Protrack was lack of food, lack of sleep, lack of sleeping arrangements. I had to sleep on the floor and I didn't like the way I was treated. While these are all things that I did not like about the course, none of these had anything to do with my leaving the course. Don't get me wrong, I do think that if you organize with a volunteer organization that you're going to get picked up from the airport, you should be picked up from the airport, you should get the accommodation that they say you're going to get and is advertised to you, and you shouldn't be treated like shit by the majority of the employees before and after the course. Not during. I have no complaints about how I personally was treated during the course. Not once did I make a complaint about that. Before and after is what I didn't like. However, I would have easily tolerated all of this if I felt the organization had its heart in the right place and was honestly aiming to protect the lives of animals and the environment. However, as I specifically stated in my first video, as you would know if you had watched that the main and only reason that I left was because I felt that 90 to 95% of the employees that I personally had contact with did not give a shit about the environment or the animals that they were there to protect. They would litter, they would burn hazardous materials, and they would show complete disregard for the safety of animals and the volunteers. That's right, I said volunteers as well. Now I didn't make this point in my last video because I didn't think it would get as much attention, so I didn't think I would have to articulate myself very well, but apparently, and obviously I was incorrect about that, so here we go. So we were on a game reserve that had multiple dangerous animals on there, including buffalo, hyenas, and rhino. Now at 3 AM in the morning, we heard an unauthorized gunshot. 3 minutes passed, we heard another unauthorized gunshot. Half an hour later, there was an unknown vehicle that pulled up at the front of our camp that we had made. Now he shone a floodlight on our camp, the sergeant woke up, and then straight after that, his first instinct was to send a trainee out of the camp into the vehicle's floodlight that he was shining on our camp and get him to ask what he wanted. So I'm just going to repaint this picture in your head in case you missed that. 2 unauthorized gunshot, on which we later found out was a white rhino being poached, a white or black rhino, I can't remember specifically, being poached. So there were poachers in the game reserve that we were on. A car pulled up at the front of a camp full of anti-poacher trainees, shone his floodlight on there, we had no idea who it was, and the sergeant sits back in his tent and sends a trainee, as though he's a pawn in a chess game, out of the camp to see what's going on. If that vehicle was a poacher, he could have easily been murdered right there and then, thanks to the lack of caring of the sergeant and corporal, sitting back safely in their tent. Thankfully, that vehicle was the farm owner's vehicle, checking to see where the gunshots came from and if we were the ones who fired them. But the important thing to remember is that the sergeant or corporal had no idea that was the case. For all they knew, that was a poacher's vehicle. Getting back onto the topic, because I feel like we went on a little bit of a tangent there, I feel as though you, as a journalist, should have, as a minimum requirement, done a tiny bit of background research and watched my YouTube video. Assuming you didn't, because if you did, and you still decided to write that incredibly biased article on me, then that would mean that you purposely decided to leave out information that didn't benefit your story and only use the small parts of information that did. And everyone knows that the media doesn't do that, right?